Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. We'll be talking about getting ready for the 2026 elections. Because 2026 is going to be a big year. So we're talking about voter registration training, creating a voting plan, tips for research candidates using 411, and to increase voter engagement. So on the agenda, show you how to register a voter, information, register online and vote 411, the voting registration form. We break that down and go step by step through the form. That's what all these are. And if you get married or if you move, you confirm information, benefits online, voter registration. You come up with a voter plan. You can track your progress, tips for researching candidates, how to find candidates, or use your 411, vote 411, check your ballot, and we have questions afterwards. Please wait until the presentation's over to ask questions. I'll write them down as we go along. We've been using the below cards for a while now, and we've had pretty good success with these, passing these out. Our last voter services, which was just a couple of weeks ago, we passed out 159 of these, so they've been pretty successful. But when it comes to filling the voter registration form, people tend to be a little cautious about that and about proofreading the form. These are the cards I'm talking about. When we pass these out, we ask people to check the voter information because West Allen, he's purged 432,000 people off the voting rolls. So we tell them that, and plus there's been polling location changes and other things, and we ask them to check it just to make sure they're on there and make sure the address and polling locations are correct. It also has a little slide that was added. That's a 411 QR code. So you can pick these up, the voter registration form, at your local registrar's office, or you can order the state of Alabama voter registration form from the Secretary of State. And you must use a paper when the voter doesn't have an unexpired ALE registered Alabama driver's license or a non-driver's license. This is when they don't have a license. They may have just moved in and they can use the last four of their social security number. So let's go through this. It's interesting when you look at the form. These are the two boxes that have to be checked, and these are the smallest things on the form. So this gets skipped all the time. It's amazing. So what they have to do, they have to mark yes on that, and it says if you answer no on either one of these, the form isn't going to get looked at. Then you have the area where you put your name, and then if you just got married, you can put your maiden name on that block. And this is on your date of birth. This is the second most item that they forget about. It's a birth date, and sometimes they put in the date. They're registering the form on the same day, so you got to remind them put the birth date in there. They have the phone number and their contact email. Now on this side, if they have an Alabama license, they can put the number in there. If they don't have an Alabama license, they can put the last four of the social security number. So that's what that is. Now, this little block here, I don't even know why it's on the form. It's because it says I don't have an Alabama license, a non-driver's, or a social security number. So why, if you don't have that, why is it on there? So if you check that, it's not going to get processed at all. So the next slide is, okay, address where you live. This is where you sleep. Alabama does not have a length of residency requirement. So you have your place where you sleep or where you stay most of the time, you can put that address in. Or you can put a place where you get your mail. Now, sometimes when they go to the assisted living facilities, they put their daughter's mail on there or their sons or whatever, because they get their mail for them. So you have a place where you sleep, and you have a place where you get your mail. And then they ask you, well, if you moved recently, you can put your last registered to vote must be a physical address. place of birth, put what you know, county, city, state, or country. It's amazing how many people don't know where they were born. It's unbelievable. And here you have a diagram where you can show if your homeless person lives, you can describe. Now we work with a First Stop, and we've been there 4 or 5 times this year. And there's always somebody, they don't live there or they sleep at the Salvation Army, but they can actually draw a picture where they are staying, if they're under a bridge or whatever, and put under the bridge or where that is on this form. And if you have received assistance, that's where the volunteer assisted citizen to register need to fill this out. Be sure you put your phone number. Don't be surprised to get a call from the registrar's office. And you put your phone number and your address in there. This block is here is optional, and they always fill this out. And they always get confused with it, but they don't have to fill this out. Now, when they get down here, they have a voter declaration, read and sign under penalty of perjury. Then they put a little optional, because of a sincerely held belief, I decline to include the final 4 words of the oath above, and that's the contained herein is true, so help me God. So they have to write their name, and I always, when they pick up the form, I always ask them to write legibly, because the name at the bottom has to match the name on the top of the form, and they put today's date in. Now, if they go online, they can go online and they can register online, but they have to have an Alabama license to do so. So here's what I did. I filled this out. I'm not a robot, and then I hit begin voter registration application. So what this does is ask me my name. Oh, a minute. It's still up?
Yes, it's still up. Sorry, I put a comment in and I
Okay.
probably locked your screen.
Okay, you can see that. Okay, ask me my name, Roger Ellis, my birth date. Then they ask where I live, Madison, and my street address, which I blocked out, Huntsville, Alabama, 35816. Then I'll ask my mailing address, which is just like the form. If I want somebody to get my mail, I can put that in this. Demographics, please select information that applies equally to you. The place of birth or your birthmarks. Again, this isn't, it's optional. Previous information, if I got married and I changed my name, previous residence, if I just moved into the area, it's a good idea to put the address in there. Confirm information. And what this does, everything you put in there, it gives you a list of everything you put in there so you can verify before you hit the final block. Voting declaration, I'm a U.S. citizen. I live in Alabama. I'll be 18 years old. I'm not barred voting for any disqualifying felony conviction. I've not been judged mentally incompetent in the court of law. So when you type your name in here, it's always in capital. So when you put your name in there, it'll be in capital letters. And then you hit submit application. The register application is entered into the voter registration system directly, but no one retyping handwritten applications. The submitted application goes directly to the Alabama Secretary of State and the county registrar. After submittal, there is a confirmation number provided to your voter that positively affirms the application was received. And what you do when you get that number, what I do is take a picture of it, just in case there is a problem. And it's easy, so you use no trees doing this. Okay, let's come up with a voting plan. Now, we've asked people to do this, and it's amazing how many don't know what they're doing on the day of the election. They don't know who they're going to vote for. They don't know if their voter registration is fine or what. So we come up with a card to ask them to go to 411.org/LWVAL. They go there and find out what your voting plan is. And the first thing you need to do is check your registration or your registration to vote. You have to do that 2 weeks before the election. And if you have to make a correction, you can do it then, but before 2 weeks before the election, they close that off. You learn about your absentee voting options, confirm your polling place, confirm you have other voter identification, you check election schedules, research candidates, confirm your transportation options. A lot of people don't have rides, so we have a couple of other organizations we team with that give people rides to the polls. And share your plan with a friend. Now, what we do when we do this, we keep track of everything we give out. Let's like here, this is a Jazz in the Park Festival. So we kept track of the cards we sent out. We kept track of the stickers, the Alabama Channel brochures we send out, and the bookmarks. And we also have it in a type form too. And that way, when we at the end of the year, we'll know how many we passed out, how we're doing, and why some places didn't work as well as others. Now the candidates are out there promoting themselves and trying to say what they're doing. But the thing is, they can do that all they want right now. But come January 23rd, they have to put the nomination by party primary, must file a declaration of candidacy with state party chairman no later than 5 p.m. 116 days before the election. That's when they have to register. On February 26th, a state party chairman must certify names of primary election candidates, except for candidates of county offices, to the Secretary of State no later than 5 p.m. 82 days prior to the primary. Now, I've seen people who've been out there, canvassing, knocking on doors, saying they're running for this, they're going to do this, and when they get to the party wants to underwrite them. They say, no, we don't want you. We want somebody else. And I've seen that happen. So you got to be careful when you're doing this. On February 26th, county party chairman must certify names of primary candidates to county office probate judge no later than day 5 or by 5 p.m. 82 days prior to the primary. So these are 3 dates that are pretty important to the candidate. Offices on the ballot in 2026. And you can go to this link and click on it and you'll see all this. But the local elections, this is the same year as a state election. So you have local elections and state elections. So we have 2 elections going on in the same year. The local elections will be in August. The state elections will be in November. And this is the places who they have in local elections. Auburn, Bessemer, Gadsden, Huntsville, Mountain Brook, and Scottsboro. School board elections will be actual races on ballots will vary by municipalities, and the county, it varies by the county. Now, your federal elections, we got the senator coming up, and 7 out of 7 seats for the House of Representatives. We also have the governor, the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, state treasurer, state auditor, agriculture industries, state senators, 35 of 35, state reps, 105 of 105, state board, circuit judges, public service commission, place 1 and 2. So that ballot is going to be pretty big when you get it. So you need to look up these people and have an idea of what you're going to vote for. Hopefully they'll have a sample ballot so you can look through it and check off who you want to vote for, and you can bring that in with you when you go to the ballot box. When candidates announce they're running, you can usually visit their websites or Facebook pages. For example, the 2026 governor race has following candidates who have joined the race. And she got this off of Ballotpedia. And you can see there's Real Boyd, Mel Brown, Doug Jones, Chad Chug Martin, Ken McFeeters, Tommy Tuberville, and Ronald Burr. They're the ones running for governor of Alabama. And here you have the different emails you can click on. Or you can look at Facebook pages. Facebook is just covered with these guys right now. Other ways you can find information about the candidates, You can go 411.com Alabama and look when the date comes around, January 23rd. You should be able to go there and find the candidates who are running. Or if you're already in office, you can hear them on the Alabama channel, which I recommend everybody use because I use that and I record for them, and it's pretty interesting what they have to say. The Electronic Fair Campaign Practices Act, candidate forums, which we do, internet searches for news articles, videos, and social media posts. And to understand the offices on the ballot, you can search online. You got Ballotpedia here, you got congress.gov, Allison, and judicialalabama.gov, the appellate justice system chart. Okay, well, I'm finished with mine. So here's 411. This is what the front page looks like. So Judy, take over from here. And does anybody have any questions about the form or anything?
If people want to ask questions on this section, and then the next section will be focused on Vote 411 or comments, whatever.
Nothing? Okay. Okay, Judy. Judy, you're on.
And you're on mute.
I'm in try to share land. Second. Okay.
Probably want to share your desktop. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I am. I just couldn't get there. That's big. Okay. Do what?
It looks good.
Okay. Well, and I want to tell my friends from Naples that if y'all have any questions about 411 and how y'all might want to use it, I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you, whether it's phone call or Zoom or whatever, and tell you what I've learned and how we've changed things and how we managed to get through these projects. So Vote 411, what I've kind of found out is that we all plug it. We all talk about it. It's on all our league collateral. And I'm actually sometimes surprised by how many of us don't know a lot about it. And that's because we don't have any reason to use it. You know, we tell everybody come out and visit this great voter resource, but we typically have either sources that we use, or we know who we're going to vote for because we're more in the know than the average voter or whatever. But there's just a lot of league members that don't know a lot about how Vote 411 actually works. So let's see here. There we go. So when you think about voter guides, voters want information to help them understand about voting, how to vote, when to vote, where to vote. They want to learn about what's on the ballot so they can make choices. And they want nonpartisan official ways that they get information that they can trust. Okay, there's so much misinformation out now that they want to know and trust where they're getting their information from. So you've got two piles of voters, experienced voters who, for the most part, want quick access and to confirm, you know, when and where and stuff about the current election and ballot measures. And then you've got infrequent voters who maybe want to know more just generally about voting. They want to know the same information about the candidates, et cetera, but they also may need help in what the polling place hours are and what absentee voting procedures are, you know, that kind of stuff. So let's see here. So what does Vote 411 include? Okay, voting information. You can register, check or change your voter registration, find out how and where to vote, and check various deadlines, registration deadlines, absentee ballot deadlines. And this is all customized by state. But also, when you first go into Vote 411, you enter your address. So a lot of this information is customized by exactly where you live. candidate information, including positions, qualifications, and contact information. And this is sort of, as I'll explain in a little bit, may or may not be there, depending upon whether your area has used the survey capability that's built into Vote 411, ballot information, sample ballot with races and candidates, and issues such as ballot initiatives or referendums. So if, for example, we have ballot initiatives in Alabama, we actually load those into Vote 411 with an explanation of what they are that is generated in a nonpartisan way so that we can tell people, but we typically do not take positions on those. Let's see. Okay, now we had an interesting experience in our 2025 municipal elections. I don't know how we crazily decided to do this, but we covered 100 Alabama cities on Vote 411, which was 515 races and almost 1,200 candidates. And the hardest thing about all that was to have an address lookup. You have to have something called GIS files that are loaded into Vote 411. And some cities, you could download those things right off their websites. Some you could file an information request and have them in 24 hours. Some had other companies that helped them with their maps, and you had to get permission from the county or the city. And then that place, whatever that company was, would send them to you. But a whole lot of them, one of them said, no, you can't have that. Go ask it from the Secretary of State. And some just didn't even know what they were. So, but the really great thing about that is that we probably found them for only maybe 12 of the 100 Alabama cities. But now we have those GIS files for the 2029 election. Okay, because they do change. You have to be sure they're updated because when cities annex territory, then that changes their boundaries, can potentially change the boundaries of their districts. So like, for example, I talked to Auburn. Auburn is having their municipal elections next August. And I found who has them. And they said, but you need to check back about every month because we're always adding property to the city. And so we're having to change the boundaries of those city council districts. So that's just always kind of interesting. But we got email addresses for 379 candidates and invited them to the candidate survey. And we had a 42% response rate, which if you've ever done Vote 411 or ask candidates to participate, an incumbent and somebody that's unopposed has zero motivation to participate in a candidate survey. So because a lot of times in the South, we have lots of unopposed races, we have lots of incumbents who are, just going to win their election. So it's hard to get candidates to participate. But what I found out in the municipal elections is there's a lot more people, a lot more unknown people, a lot more people that are interested in getting their name out. And so we had some pretty, we had what I thought was pretty good participation. So let's see here. I think, let me see. Let me stop share for a second and go somewhere else. I actually did myself a personal Zoom today and practiced this because I get really, okay. So this is the back side of Vote 411. Okay. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because this was a candidate for the Supreme Court Associate Justice in the last election. And these are the sorts of questions that they're asked. How have your education, training, and legal experience prepared you to serve as an associate justice? And they have a unique link, and they use that link, and they come in and actually type this information in. Nobody with the league helps them. These are in their own words, and we don't touch them. The only thing I've ever done is probably sometimes help somebody maybe upload a photograph, whatever. For the most part, I don't mess with these things. And then we can always tell the candidate that, what you write, be careful with your punctuation, your spelling, because all of that reflects upon you. But you can see that if we have a candidate that actually answers these questions, then that's a tremendous voter resource. What, in your opinion, are the two greatest areas of need in the Alabama justice system? How should the Supreme Court respond to them? And so administratively, they can do little to increase funding, but we need to take a look at the 41 circuits. Do we need more or less judges of comprehensive review of physical and technological needs? Okay, now where that might fit on my list of priorities, I don't know. But the real strength of Vote 411 is if everybody in this race answered these questions, I can stack them up next to each other and really have a sense of who I might want to vote for. So, again, it's a little bit of a challenge in the South because they don't want to participate more. But I found this year that a more personalized ask actually helps motivate them to do that. The person that's at the front of the race is going to be less motivated, but a lot of the people that are, running second, third, and fourth, they are actually more motivated because they want to get their information out there. So let me go back to my little presentation. Okay.
I think if you hit current slide, it'll
Oh,
start.
yeah. There we go. Okay. Okay. So it's obviously a grand voter resource with one caveat. What it offers depends on what we put in it. I mean, essentially. The national furnishes just the basic information on upcoming elections, basic state voter information, like deadlines and registration stuff. But they also furnish the GIS files for national, state, and county races. Okay. So that means that we're in good shape for these elections coming up. The national, whereas the congressional races and the Senate race, those districts, well, not Senate, obviously, but the congressional districts, those GIS files are furnished. The state races, the gubernatorial statewide, you've got statewide races, but you've also got like the Board of Education and Public Service Commission that might be district related. And then county races, even though I'm not sure there's a lot of county races this year. But then we have to furnish, the leagues actually furnish the races, the candidates, ballot initiatives, and the other GIS files. If we're doing a survey functionality, then we've got to come up with our questions and the text for the candidate communications. Oops, did I just do that? I did. Wait a minute. Okay. Whew. And then candidate contact information, because that's kind of a squirrely thing too. Because in order to invite them to do the survey, you have to have their contact information. Okay. Got to send them an email and say, we want you to participate. So, are you interested? I'm going to send you a link to this address. But you don't have your list of candidates until after qualifying is over. So that actually gives you a smaller window to get candidate contact information because you don't have the complete list of candidates until qualifying is over. Okay. And then this was also interesting this year too. At the end of the races, to find who won so that you can actually, or if it goes to a runoff, to find out which candidates are going to the runoff. And depending upon, like in the municipal elections, it was actually kind of hard because some of those were pretty small towns. And where they share that information, whether it's on a website or media, is sometimes kind of hard to find. Okay, typical election timeline. Roger just kind of went through that. But you got the election dates that are announced, candidates all along the way announced and campaign. Then the parties open candidate qualification period. And, if it's a county race, the county would do it. If it's a city race, the city would do it. But this is our year for primary races. So it's the parties that actually open their respective candidate qualification periods. So then at some point, you've got a list of candidates. and they do more campaigning at some point. Sample ballots are available. Alabama excuse required absentee voting begins. We don't have early voting, true early voting. Primary election day, runoff election day, and then the general election. And this timeline is controlled by the Secretary of State. Now, typical vote 411 activities. There's no reason we can't start today developing our letters and our survey questions. Okay. The survey questions, we vary survey questions depending upon the race. Last year, we gave local leagues the opportunity to submit different questions for their city or area if they wanted to. I did really encourage that because it's just a little bit harder to keep up with, number one, from a communication perspective, but also the candidates react badly to gotcha questions. And if you drill down too far into the weeds on what you're going to ask them, it may demotivate them to actually participate. So I think there's a careful balance when you can develop really great questions, but get information that voters can use to differentiate between the candidates. Then, of course, there's no reason today that we can't be looking for GIS files. Like Roger mentioned that we have 6 municipal elections next August. I've already got the GIS files for 4 of them. So, so I've been at work on that. So once qualification is complete and the candidate list is available, we can load the races and the candidates into 411. And just to know, we don't do that individually. You can put them all on a spreadsheet and import them. Okay. And that spreadsheet format's very important. And the big old the kicker is to locate the email addresses. But I will say that our Kathy, the voter services head, who she and I were joined at the hip through this process, she got an idea about communicating. Every candidate has to file with the ethics office, and they have to submit all of their information about their candidacy, which would include email addresses. So Kathy submitted an information request to get all the candidates in all the races across the Alabama with their contact information. And so it was not, the sequence was terrible. It was hard to look through, but if we had somebody in one particular town that we couldn't find, you could search through that spreadsheet and at least locate their email address. So it enabled us to fully cover the cities that we had. Whether that exists in Florida, I'm not sure, but it's certainly worth checking out. So then we would invite candidates to the survey, and then there's follow-up with candidates. And I'll also say that we had a lot of local leagues through the years that were not excited about doing Vote 411 because they thought the way that we had actually executed it through the years was we would chase after candidates. Y'all haven't submitted your, survey request, and we'd call them, send them communications, and then it just was very labor intensive. And we finally just made the decision we would rather cover more locations and not chase after candidates. That if they were okay with this, with Vote 411 saying they did not submit their survey, then we should be okay with that too. And so that's kind of where we landed. And so it changed local leagues' receptiveness to participating in this. And it didn't seem to affect our response. I mean, we still had a good response this year. I also, just of interest, found that Vote 411 comes with some communication templates, and they sound, I don't even want to say they sound like AI wrote them. They sound like they were computer generated. And so I changed the text to make them more personal, to highlight things like, this is a free opportunity for advertising your campaign, that kind of stuff, trying to motivate people to participate. Okay, and then when ballots are available and voting by absentee ballot begins, then that's our goal usually, to publish the candidate survey and Vote 411. Kathy always thought that by the time somebody can pick up a ballot and start making decisions, that's when our goal should be to actually publish Vote 411. And I'll go ahead and tell you, the tricky thing is how you publicize it. You can send out press releases. You can use your QR code on your communications, send it out in social media, whatever. But we're continually trying to have additional ideas because we can have all this great information there. But people need to know that they don't have to rely on a physical voter guide, that this is accessible to anybody anywhere. I'll tell you one quick little thing too. We were covering Selma, Alabama. And so I was sort of watching their social media to find when they were announcing their candidates, and caught somebody posting, how do I find out which city council district I'm in? And somebody actually replied to them and answered the question, walk around your neighborhood and see what candidate signs are in your neighbor's yards. Because the only election district map that we ever found was on a wall in the courthouse. So what this system actually offers some of these small towns and these municipalities are that somebody can key in their address and actually tell what their districts are. Now, there's other places to go get that, but if you've got GIS files for an area, then somebody can just go here and see what's on their ballot, see what districts they're in, see where their polling place is. It's just all in one place. After the election certification, you've got a reset for runoffs, which, essentially you're just taking everybody off and maybe adding back the one who won, or if it's, runoff, then you just take the other candidates off to where it's the same race. It's a runoff and you've got only the two candidates who are in the runoffs. And then you publish runoffs, and then you repeat all this for the general election. So it's going to be a busy year between the primary races and the general election. Let's see what else. Okay, and then a little bit more about GIS files. I cannot find a simple explanation for what GIS files are, period. I have looked, but essentially it's a files that store geographic information that when you load them into a system that knows how to read them, it gives you something like a map. Okay, it's typically a map. Like I've seen them for, where certain types of native trees are planted, in a city, whatever. They can plot these locations, but they plot the election districts. And then when you load these things in, it shows you the boundaries. And if you've ever been to Secretary of State's website where you can go do their lookup, you know that GIS files are behind that so that they can tell you by street address what district you're in and who your representatives are. Okay, we mentioned that. Okay, now you've got the standard generic vote 411, and then we have what's called a white page. Okay, let's see here if I can, okay, do that. Okay, all right. If you enter vote411.org, this is where you go to. Let's see. All right. We got a little sideways with we didn't really get sideways by our Secretary of State, but he kind of accused us of scraping information off people who used Vote 411. He was public about that accusation. But then what we did was we went in and found that when you click, you're on the generic one, you click register to vote, and it tells you that voter registration is powered by Rock the Vote. And in reality, Rock the Vote, like just about any of these sort of web pages, probably does collect information on who visits. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they do, because if you get midway through the registration process, it sends you an email and says, do you want to finish this? So we decided that we didn't want any semblance of participating with somebody scraping voter information off. And so we pursued what they call a white page with Vote 411. And now, okay. And that's what our it actually is personalized at the top. Now, before my friends from Florida get really interested in this, it costs money. Okay, so you kind of have to talk to your Vote 411 people about, they worked a deal with us. I don't know how much they're going to continue working a deal with us. But what we did was it pretty much brands it with your page. I mean, your state. The register to vote now goes straight to the Secretary of State's site. Oops, I accidentally. This is kind of interesting. You actually have a toggle on both the. Come on. Oh, wait. This little thing gets in my way. Go back to English. There we go. All right. This up until last week said check your registration, but Alabama doesn't really participate in sharing its polling places with, I think, Google or whatever. And so we had them change this button to say check your registration and polling place. Okay, so click that and it takes us once again straight to the Secretary of State site where you can check your registration and view your polling places, keying in your information. Okay. So if you go in the other way, it can't show you state-specific information because until you enter your address, it doesn't know what state you're in. Okay. But if you use the white page, then it knows when you come in that you're starting from Alabama. Another interesting thing, it shows you the upcoming elections, but the tricky thing is it shows you all of them for the state, not just yours in your particular area. But if you think you haven't entered your address yet, so these are really, it just knows Alabama, so it's showing you all the Alabama. And this is kind of interesting because especially in a college environment, academic environment, if you have somebody using Vote 411, they can just go to Georgia or go to Florida and see Florida specific information. So if a student is wanting to figure out their voting plan, do I want to, vote here or do I want to vote absentee? Then they can actually come to this page and go to information for their particular state and make that decision. And then with the white page, you have an option to actually put some of your specific state-specific information on it. And we chose the voting IDs and provisions for individuals with disabilities. And then down here, you can actually customize those as well. And in fact, Kathy, now our Learn More goes to our brand new website.
Yay! Yay!
I know. How about that? Anyway, let's see. Get rid of y'all. Go back here. I think
you might want to, when you get done, just show them that website real quick on the voter services part, just yeah. after you get through. Okay.
Rewind. Well, almost finished. Okay. And again, Roger went through this as well. So the statewide offices, municipal elections, these 6 primary election dates, runoff, and then general election. And then our proposed plan right now is that our subscription for 2026 will include all Alabama elections, which is the pile, but I think it's about equivalent to what we did last year, actually. So the local league districts that are in their geographic areas. And then the state league is going to do the work for the areas of the state where we don't have local leagues. So that's kind of pretty much how we plan to do that. Let's see here. Okay. Any questions? And one of my friends from Florida emailed us yesterday and told us that y'all were coming. And I was the one who replied to that email, and I will reply again and I'll give you my contact information. Anybody else got questions? And we're going to run to our little web page real quick. Let's see here. I just use my little handy dandy button. Okay, this is our relatively new website. Get ready to vote. Okay. We got, am I eligible? And for our voter rights restoration work, we will link to the list of disqualifying felonies. How do I register? Online, mail in person. And we've got links to go to those places or to get the county registrar's contact information. And then what do I need to register? What you need to register online or by mail, which Roger did a real good job of just training us on that. When and where to vote. And make a voting plan. There we go.
That was the first one. What was there was 2 tabs there. This is really excellent. Did you have another tab? Yeah.
We've got an upcoming elections, which is actually, okay, that one needs to come off. But so it's got essentially the same information that Vote 411 does, with the kicker that I think this is actually pretty cool. We've actually got the deadlines for each of those specific special races too. And the way that I do that is I put together a little Excel calculator, because all these dates are like 63 dates from elections, 44 date from the election, and I never can figure out what it includes and what it doesn't. So I made a little Excel calculator to where I can put in the election date. It'll give me these dates back. So,
yeah, and all of these special elections, whoever gets elected is going to be, even though they're just taking office in 2020, some of them it's 2026. They're still going to run for office again next November, but it gives them the incumbency advantage. So it's really I just find that kind of interesting, an interesting way to someone to basically get to be an incumbent for a few months and then run for office as an incumbent. But I guess that such is life. I mean, that's just the way it works here in Alabama. Judy, that was excellent. Thank you for going through all that. And Roger, you did. Between the two of them, I feel like we've gotten some basic skills that are going to help us when we get ready to start engaging with voters during the, we're going to be starting pretty soon to really try to get people to start thinking about voting, because, right now when you talk to people, they're like, well, it's not time yet. But, if they don't start thinking about it now and talking about why voting matters, then it's going to be really hard to actually get out the vote and actually increase voter turnout. The next elections in May, the state primary, state and federal primary is on May 19th. So I'm going to stop here, and for Judy or Roger, if any of you guys want to make a comment, ask a question, then please come off of mute and just ask your question.
I'd just like to say thanks a lot for allowing us in. It's interesting to see the subtle differences between the 2 states. So, do you actually register voters and bring the papers in? Florida voted that out a few years ago.
Do you register voters in Florida? But yes, you don't.
We register voters by helping them go to the state online website.
Well, that. So there is a fine distinction. When we say we're registering voters, that's sort of a colloquialism, but the only person that actually registers the voter is the registrar. And so we're helping them. We're helping voters get ready to vote.
Yeah, we take the form into the registrars too.
We used to do that, but it changed.
Yeah, in Florida, they passed a law with very severe penalties, like $250,000 if somebody mishandles a form. And so our state league has said, we're out of the business of registering with forms. We're only doing it online. And basically, we just sit down and say, get out your driver's license. I'll help you register. And,
Oh,
you
you
know,
walk 'em through.
and we walk them through the whole thing and get them, you know, get them to the end where and see that it's submitted. And then we tell them, okay, you're in. And likewise, we have universal vote by mail. And so as soon as we get them registered, then we say, now let's go in and request a vote by mail ballot for you. Just say you have it just in case you can't get to the poll or you miss the early voting.
It's funny how each state has different ways to figure out how to suppress the vote.
And they're all in the
And
South.
also maybe even you've got ways to help the voter that we don't have. We don't have early voting. So that to me is
Yeah.
just,
We're one of the 3 states that don't have early voting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
well, see, these are the kind of things that, you know, when you're talking to voters, and this is to me part of the conversation that we all as a voter services community needs to get used to having these conversations about, you know, people wouldn't be fighting so hard to keep you from voting if your vote didn't matter. And that's just part of this conversation that, you know, we really need people to not get discouraged and look on this as a long-term battle, basically. And it's gotten more and more critical that we get more people to show up and actually vote, and then not just vote, but then engage after the elections, before and after, just to make sure people know we're watching them. Anything else?
Not on this subject.
Well, we'd be glad for you to join us on our other trainings. Everybody's welcome.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Well, we have a YouTube site that has all the videos we've done on there.
Oh,
We have
We'll look
that.
that up.
That'll be in that email that you get afterwards.
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah, it's all
Thank
of it.
you.